The hospital on Route 9 inches. My uncle was an urban explorer for most of his 30s. Not the kind who posts videos online, the quiet kind, who went alone, brought a good flashlight, and never told anyone where he was going until he was already back. He photographed abandoned buildings for himself, kept the prints in shoeboxes under his bed, and only showed them to people he trusted. I was one of those people. Last year, he showed me the ones from Harlow Psychiatric Hospital and told me what happened the night he took them. Harlow closed in 1987 after a funding dispute and a series of incidents the state never fully disclosed. It sat empty on Route 9 for over 30 years, windows boarded, fence cut open by curiosity seekers, the kind of place that locals drove past quickly and didn't talk about. My uncle went on a Tuesday night in October, alone, with a camera and a flashlight and the particular kind of bravery that comes from not quite believing anything bad will happen to you. He got inside through a side door that had been forced open long before he arrived. The ground floor was standard urban decay, peeling paint, collapsed ceiling tiles, the smell of damp concrete, and something organic he couldn't identify. He moved through the old intake rooms, the administrative offices, the corridors that connected the wards. Standard, expected, nothing he hadn't seen before. The third floor was different. Every room on the third floor had the furniture still in it, not scattered or overturned the way abandoned buildings usually look, arranged neatly. Beds made with sheets that had rotted in place but were still tucked in at the corners, chairs pulled up to windows, personal items on the bedside tables, placed with care. It looked less like a building that had been abandoned, and more like a building that had been paused, as if everyone had simply stopped mid-moment and never resumed. My uncle is not a superstitious man. He photographed everything methodically, room by room, the way he always did. It was in the 14th room that he noticed the mirror. Every room had a mirror above the sink, standard institutional issue. Every mirror on the third floor had been covered with a pillowcase. Every single one, 14 rooms in a row, all covered. He assumed it was something the staff had done before closing, some protocol he didn't understand. He lifted one pillowcase to photograph the mirror underneath. The mirror had writing on it, not scratched in, written in something that had dried dark and brown, in letters about 2 inches high, covering the entire surface of the glass. He didn't photograph it. He said later that something stopped him, some instinct he'd never felt before in years of exploring. He put the pillowcase back. He put the pillowcase back very carefully, smoothing the corners the way he'd found it. He left the building faster than he'd entered. In the parking lot, he checked his camera. 41 photographs from the first 2 floors, clear and well composed. 6 photographs from the third floor corridor. The 14-room photographs, the ones he'd taken room by room, were simply gone from the memory card, not corrupted, gone, as if they'd never been taken. He still has the prints from that night in a shoebox under his bed. He showed me all of them. The third floor corridor is in there, empty and dim and perfectly normal looking. The room photographs are not. He doesn't go exploring anymore. Tavir Schwar and Benz. Chapter 2. The Water Park. There's an abandoned water park 40 minutes outside of where I grew up. It closed the summer I was 8, abruptly, mid-season. One day it was open, and the next there were padlocks on the gates, and no explanation given to the season pass holders who showed up that morning expecting a normal Saturday. The official reason, released weeks later, was a structural issue with the main slide complex. The unofficial reason, which circulated through our town for years, was something else entirely. I didn't know the unofficial reason until I was 19, when a friend and I decided to go inside. Getting in was easy. The fence had been cut in a dozen places over the years. We went in the afternoon, which felt safer, though I couldn't have told you why. The park was strange in the way all abandoned places are strange. The shapes were familiar from childhood, but the colors were wrong, bleached and peeling, and the scale felt off without the crowds. We walked the perimeter, took photographs, felt the particular melancholy of a place that used to be loud, now being silent. The main slide complex was at the back of the park. 3 slides, side by side, the kind you rode on a mat. The structure was intact, no visible collapse, nothing that obviously justified the closure. We climbed the stairs to the top platform, which took longer than expected because several steps had rotted and needed to be tested before trusting. At the top, we could see the whole park spread out below us, the empty pools green with algae, the sun going lower than we'd realized. That's when my friend grabbed my arm. At the bottom of the center slide, in the catch pool, there was a mat, a single inflatable slide mat, the kind you rode down on, faded orange, sitting at the bottom of the slide, as if someone had just ridden down and left it there. We hadn't seen it from below. From up here, it was unmistakable. The park had been closed for 11 years. The gate had been padlocked. We had been the only people inside. We checked the fence line on the way in, and there was no sign of anyone else. That mat had no reason to be there, positioned at the base of the slide, right side up, as if someone had just stepped off it and walked away. We did not go down the slides. We left the way we came in and drove home without speaking much. I looked up the park later that week. The structural report from the closure was public record. There was no structural issue with the main slide complex. The closure had been recommended by the county after a drowning incident that the park's owners had initially attempted to keep quiet. A child, 9 years old, in the center slide's catch pool. I've thought about that mat a lot since then. I've thought about what it means that it was there, right side up at the base of the center slide, as if someone had just stepped off. I try not to think about who, but it's still a small chance it does no refabie. Chapter 3. The school at the end of Birch Road. The school had been closed since 1994. Single story, 8 classrooms, built in the 1960s for a community that shrank faster than anyone had planned. It sat at the end of Birch Road, behind a chain-link fence with a padlocked gate, the windows intact, the roof holding, looking less abandoned than simply closed, as if the district had just decided to stop using it one day and had never gotten around to doing anything else with it. I drove past it every day for 2 years on my way to work. I don't know why I finally stopped one morning in November. Something about the light, maybe, or the particular stillness of it against the fog. I parked on the road and looked at it through the fence for a while. That's when I noticed the window. 3rd classroom from the left, 2nd window from the bottom. There was a drawing taped to the inside of the glass. A child's drawing, crayon on white paper, the kind with a house and a sun, and stick figures in a row, faded but visible, taped to the inside of a window of a school that had been locked since 1994. I told myself a caretaker had left it. I told myself it had been there since before the closure, and I'd simply never noticed it before. I drove to work and thought about it all day. The next morning I stopped again. The drawing was still there, but there were now 2 more drawings in the adjacent window. Same style, same crayon, same white paper. A tree, what looked like a bird or possibly a hand. I stopped every morning that week. Each morning, 1 or 2 more drawings had appeared in the windows. Always new, always in the same child's hand, always taped neatly to the inside of the glass. By Friday, there were 9 drawings across 3 windows. I called the school district that Friday afternoon. The building had been locked since 1994 and had not been accessed since a routine inspection in 2019. No caretaker, no access. The woman I spoke to seemed unconcerned until I described the drawings, at which point she put me on hold for a long time and came back to tell me she would look into it. I drove past the following Monday. All 9 drawings were gone, The windows were bare. The building looked exactly as it had always looked, closed and still and empty. I still drive that road to work. I still look at the windows every morning. They have been bare for 8 months now. Last week, on a Thursday morning in the fog, I thought I saw something in the 3rd classroom window. Not a drawing, a shape, the approximate size and outline of a child, standing close to the glass, very still. By the time I had slowed down enough to look properly, the fog had shifted and there was nothing there. I have been taking a different road to work since then. If these kept you up a little longer than you planned, that's exactly the point. New transmissions every week. Leave your own story in the comments. Some of them find their way into future files. This has been the Static Files. Try not to look behind you.